Now, even with that enormous valuation, we got some people. Here's a writer on Barron's, Eric Savitz. He says Apple is spending dramatically below peers on innovation. So he says, I don't care about that stock price. I want to see him spending more on R&D, research, development. Can't just sit there and ride on the train that got you there. You got to put fresh fuel in there. Will?
Yeah, sure.
The momentum.
I'm on board.
The momentum only takes you. It's nice to have momentum.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. You're already moving in that direction. But at some point, you got to put some fuel on the flame.
More thrust?
Yeah, you got to thrust.
Yeah.
You nailed it. Anyway, here's the thing. It's a weird article because I'm reading through it and I realize, okay, so Apple is spending, what do they say here? Something like how many billion? 7% of revenue. R&D growth has outstripped revenue growth by a factor of 3 since 2012 and now amounts for 7% of revenue. However, nonetheless, Apple continues to underspend its peers. He thinks comparisons with rivals argue for spending 10% as opposed to 7% for research and development. By the way, I should mention this article, the writer of this article, Eric Savitz, is different from the analyst being cited and quoted within the article itself, who is an analyst by the name of Sakanagi. Okay? Can we just get that together? We don't want to misquote anybody here. Apple has spent just 2% of free cash flow on mergers and acquisitions since 2012 versus the 25% of free cash flow that peers spent on deals. So they're also not acquiring companies. You know how you hear about companies acquiring companies? You never hear, very rarely you hear about, they bought Beats, and every so often it'll be they'll buy somebody in the augmented reality space or something like this, working on those glasses and whatever else. But you feel like, hey, they got these cash reserves. What are they sitting on? I mean, they got $500 billion in cash flow. I don't know what it is. They got an enormous pile of cash. You'd say, why don't you go out there and do something with it? But Apple has preferred historically to give that money back to the investors or to do the buybacks on the stocks. They've taken a different approach from others. Anyway, there's a fear that if you don't invest enough into innovation, you won't have that next product, that next big product. But the thing, or the counter argument to this particular analyst here, is that Apple's scale is so enormous that in order to get the R&D value, they may not need to operate at the same percentage as other companies with a lower revenue figure. Do you see what I'm saying here? The lump sum figure is still enormous for R&D, and they have such a competitive advantage because of their scale that they may not need to spend the same percentage as some of their competitors on research and development. So it's a tough one. Obviously, Apple it's just a hot conversation around Apple and investing specifically. And this type of content sells right now because of the guys we talked about earlier that are sitting at home. They're trading the stocks. You're ordering the DoorDash. You understand? Use code Lou later. You get $5. You see, and probably the $5 may not be the same amount you earn flipping those stocks, but it's guaranteed. You see the difference? It's guaranteed with the code Lou later. So anyways, it is when he says Apple is spending dramatically below peers, it appears he's speaking in percentage terms, and less so in lump sum figure terms. So anyway, you can go give it a check. Check it out. Definitely when it comes to acquisitions, they're spending less in a lump sum figure. And sometimes that's a fast-paced way to develop. You go in and you hire, you're essentially hiring talented people when you acquire a group of people that are working on something sophisticated. You acquire their technology, you acquire their intellectual property. It's a surefire way, integrate. But also sometimes it goes a little haywire.
Yeah, teams might not work together.
Sometimes things get shut down. It just never works out and never integrates. So Apple it appears to be fairly conservative in that area.